Oh, for fuck's sake, stop talking.
Ready when you are.
Blair, you could bring music to play.
Don't you guys already, need enough stuff? You want me to hold your hand there too?
It's for music.
Oh, morning dance, but if I retire, I guess going to one.
You guys would have to decide what music you want.
And Weber's usually here. Unusual. Ready?
I'm good.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Energy and Environmental Committee. It's Friday, March 12th, 2021, and it's exactly 9:00 a.m. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
You need to do a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Wanicki.
Here.
Allen. Caius.
Caius present.
Molina.
Molina present.
Strathman.
Strathman present.
Weber.
Present.
Ah,
Bates.
okay, thank you. Now I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Caius move.
Molina seconds.
Okay, moved by Caius, second by Molina. Any discussion? Any changes? All in favor? Roll
I
call.
have a question.
Oh, I'm
I have a
sorry.
question. I have a question.
Who is
This
this?
is Tom. This is Tom Copey. I'm sorry.
Oh,
am I
good
in the
morning,
wrong
Tom. Sure, go ahead.
Is this transportation?
Oh, boy.
I can't
Is
hear
it-
you.
No,
Is this transportation?
no.
No, this is energy and environment, Tom.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wanted to join the energy. Sorry to bother you all. I'm so
Well-
sorry.
You're welcome to join us if you'd like.
I'm here. Thank you. I'll be
Okay.
listening in.
All
And
right.
solar.
Okay, let's see, roll call, please.
Allen.
Allen, aye.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes.
Strathman.
Strathman, yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Wanicki.
Yes. Thank you. All right, moving along, we have environmental, and I'll let Jody present Arnold Schramel.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear Mr. Copey is online because this was one of his recommendations and suggestions at Ag Committee, that we have somebody come and talk to the E&E Committee about potential options that the county could proceed forward with some solar projects. And Mr. Schrammel of Progressive Solutions has worked closely with Mooseheart and Fox Metro on some similar projects, and we're excited to hear from him today. So thank you, Mr. Schrammel, for attending.
Yes, thanks for inviting me, and I understand the chairman wasn't able to make it today, but when I talked to Chairman Bates, we also worked with the Fox Valley Park District on doing some solar on some of their rooftops. So she asked me if I could give a quick update on what's going on with the FEJA Act, which is different than the CJ Act being proposed. But can you move to slide 2, please? I wanted to give you a quick update on the Future Energy Jobs Act, which was actually a legislation passed in December of 2016. The Future Energy Jobs Act's primary goals were to reduce energy consumption and increase power generation from renewables. It was a very large bill. The 3 primary components were: 1, to strengthen and expand renewable portfolio standards to ensure stable, predictable funding for renewable development. The money was approximately 180 to 200, growing to $220 million per year for incentives that included wind, large-scale solar, rooftop solar, and community solar. That was one piece of the legislation. Number 2 was to substantially expand the energy efficiency programs for commercial, industrial, and residential customers. In the ComEd area, the ComEd is spending approximately $350 million a year in funding energy efficiency programs. And they have it broken down into buckets for residential, small commercial, large commercial, and industrial. For the first time, the bill authorized ComEd actually can earn a rate of return on these investments. In the past, there was always a conflict. Utilities weren't big fans of energy efficiency because it lowered their revenue. So this model turned that around. So now ComEd can earn a rate of return on investments in energy efficiency, but they also have penalties. They need to achieve at least 21.5% energy efficiency improvements by 2030. Otherwise, there's financial penalties. And the last part of the law was it instituted the first legislatively mandated nuclear subsidies in the nation for Exxon's Quad City and Clinton nuclear power plants, which is approximately $150 to $200 million a year. It was a large bill. It had a lot of other components, including job training, low income, special carve outs for environmental and social justice communities. There's also circuit breakers in there, price caps to make sure that the amount of money consumers are paying does not explode. And there was a goal, it wasn't mandated, but there was a goal to have 25% of all the electricity in Illinois come from a renewable source. Although it doesn't look like that goal is going to make it right now. If we can go to the next status. So one of the things we've been working on with a lot of our customers, can we go to the next page, please? Was that right now the funding, the Illinois Power Authority, or the funding for solar incentives recently expired in the middle of December. And like a lot of renewable energies, without the incentives, it's very marginal if these projects. The Illinois Power incentives definitely put a lot of projects over the top, where not only can you get green energy, but it's also cheaper than buying power off the grid. But as late December, all the buckets or grant money was empty. There is approximately $300 million of funds still available. But one of the things in the original FEJA Act was all the money had to be spent by May 1st of 2021. What we believe is going to happen is the legislature in Illinois down there right now is going to push that deadline out a couple years. And if that happens later on this year, the Illinois Power Authority will make funds available again. And that's why we're talking to like Kane County and a lot of our customers today. So even though there's not funding available today, it's good to start looking at things today because we believe there's going to be funding available towards the end of the year. And you want to be ready, you want to have your sites picked out, some of the preliminary work done up front, because we believe the funding is going to go quick in the second round. So if you wait to start to later in the year, by the time you're ready to submit an application, all that grant money might be already used up. But as part of what the FEJA Act did is the Illinois Power Authority was given the responsibility to allocate that funds. And they allocated the funds in 3 large buckets. The first was community solar. And community solar is really designed for residents and small business who can't install solar on their own roofs for a variety of reasons. The roofs are old or they got too much shading. But these are for residents who still want to have solar. So essentially what happens is fields are built. They're generally 8 to 10 acres large. And then different residents or small businesses can subscribe to those solar fields. That's why it's called a community solar field. The second big part of the program, they named the adjustable block program. And this is solar built on a customer's premise. So it could be built on a residential rooftop, commercial rooftop, or on an adjacent property to a facility that people don't think they'll need for the next 15 to 25 years. Again, when that program opened up, there was a lot of demand for it, but there's plenty of money in the program. But that money has also all been used up. And the last carve out was called Illinois Solar for All. That was specifically money dedicated to low income communities, nonprofits, public facilities, and environmental and social justice communities. And that program had kind of a slow start, but it again, like all the other programs, they've also used up all their grant money. So one of the things I was talking with Chairman Bates about was the potential for community solar on some of the Kane County Forest Preserve land. And we got talking about it, and it's still a potential that should be looked at. But part of the things that happened with community solar was it was way oversubscribed in the first round. There were 919 applications submitted to the Illinois Power Authority. Only 112 were selected. So only like 1 in 8 were selected. In addition, almost everything that was selected was a large 2 megawatt size field, 3.5 million annual kilowatt hours that uses 7 to 10 acres of land. And some of them were even collated where 2 fields were almost like right next to each other. In addition, because the amount of energy produced on these fields required hookups into pretty high voltage ComEd transmission lines, most of those fields were built within a mile of an existing transmission line. So they didn't have to spend a lot of money for interconnects. And also, almost all these fields were located in what's called rural greenfield area. Now, the Illinois Power Authority and a lot of stakeholders were actually disappointed there was not more diversity in the community solar fields. So they actually changed the rules going forward, which I'll just discuss on the next slide. But again, the adjustable block program. Is there a question? The adjustable block program is not oversubscribed and open, but all that funding has been used. Again, the large projects were first used and the residential bucket was the last one empty. So going forward on slide 5, this is the Illinois Power Authority going forward. Again, when funding is renewed, right now the funding is out, but we anticipate the funding will be renewed sometime this summer. If we can go to the next, what they're going to do going forward for community solar, and this is stuff we were talking about, potentially forest preserve land and stuff like that. For instance, if they have 100 new applications come in, they're going to sort those 100 applications and force rank them into townships based on density. So the projects with the highest density will, the first quarter of the projects with the highest density will get 3 points. The next 25 will get 2 points. Third will get 1 point, and the lowest will get 0. So what the Illinois Power Authority is trying to do is get more of these community solar fields built in urban / suburban environments moving forward. And what they're going to do is create a point system. So if you're building one on a rooftop in an urban area, you're going to get 3 points. If you're building a community solar out in Western Illinois in a very rural county, you'll probably get 0 points. So what we do believe is going to happen here in the next round is most of the community solar fields will be built in much more urban / suburban locations. And if we go all the way down to number 5, another important thing is the smaller projects are also going to get awarded more points. Under the existing one, almost again, all the projects were 2 megawatts and some were even co-located. So essentially they were 4 megawatts. So it's one of those things that, like when Kane County, we're talking about it, we should definitely look at what the potential sites are, but knowing that this is the points scheme that's going forward, start understanding if, hey, if it's in rural Kane County, it's probably not going to make it. If it's more in the urban parts of Kane County, then it has a much better chance of getting accepted when there's funds available. Now, our recommendations, going to slide 6 for Kane County is, again, even though there's no funding available today, we believe there's funding going to be available later this year, is really to start reviewing your properties today. Is there property near your courthouse, your judicial center? We know you've already done some solar at your animal control facility, but do an inventory of the facilities and identify what facilities you think that might be good candidates for solar moving forward. And then start gathering utility bills, and then really essentially create an RFP in the next couple months, publish an RFP, get responses, work it through your internal approval mechanism, your approval committees. Because what we did with, I'll pick on Fox Metro or Kendall County, for those projects, it was very similar. We started before the funding was even available. We looked at the fields, created RFPs, got responses, got the internal staff, and then got the elected officials on board. And basically at that point, there was a signed letter of intent that said, we are going to do solar at this location if we get the Illinois Power Authority grant money. So if they didn't get the money, then the project would stop. But if they did get the money, there was a commitment to move forward right away. And that's why all those projects got funded. They all got approval when the funding did come available. They got built and they're all now in production. So we know that, again, Kane County did it for your animal control facility, but we would like to look at both community solar options on some of the Kane County property and some what's called adjustable block program for some of your other facilities to see if solar makes sense. Both from a green energy perspective and an economic perspective. All the projects we've done with, whether it's been the ones we show here or other ones, we really want to make sure our customers are paying no more. And all of them, they've had savings. But our goal is to get them solar power at a cost less than they're paying today. And so far that's been successful. Otherwise, we generally don't recommend people do it. But there have been some of our customers that absolutely want solar and are not worried about the cost. But our philosophy is, let's try to get solar at a cost below what you're paying today. And then just slides, 7 and 8 are just some pictures of some local projects we've been involved with. Again, this stuff works, and if there's committee members or staff members that want to, see some of these fields or walk through them, most of these locations would be happy to show you how the fields were built and how they interconnect with the existing systems and how they're both saving money and getting green energy. And that's all I had today for a presentation. I was going to open it up to questions if anybody on the committee or staff had questions.
Okay, any discussion or any questions for Mr. Schrammel?
Yeah, I have a question. Ken Shepro?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, is there a purely economic rationale for the point system discouraging more rural installations?
Yeah, if the goal was trying to get as much solar built cheaply, you would absolutely build it in rural areas because it's a lot cheaper to do in urban areas. But yes, the Future Energy Jobs Act, there was a lot of concern by the urban legislatures that all the money was going to go to the rural areas. So there were specific items written into that legislation trying to get the solar distributed across the state somewhat evenly, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I guess my thought is that presumably in the rural areas, the power lines are higher, they are longer, they take up all kinds of space and distance and so forth. And it would seem to me that, and also because those areas are areas that are being expanded, that from an economic point of view and maybe even a land consumption point of view, it would seem to make more sense to at least give them equal weight as opposed to putting your thumb on the scale for the urban areas.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. From an economic standpoint, you're 100% correct. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, that wasn't how the act was originally written or passed by the legislature back in December of 16.
Right. Oh, I get that. I mean, it's sometimes unfortunate that there has to be that dimension to what ought to perhaps be a purely scientific and economic rationale. But thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Madam Chairman, this is Deborah. Can I ask a question too?
Please do, Deborah.
Thanks. Mr. Strammel, I don't have any, I'm no good with spatial stuff. Can you look at the last two slides? Do you have any idea what acreage is involved at Mooseheart and Kendall and what looked like a water treatment plant and so on? Do you happen to know those figures?
Yeah, both the Kendall County, the Mooseheart, and the Fox Metro, those were all 2 megawatt sites. And they're solar on about 7 to 8 acres on all 3 of those locations. They actually take up about 10 acres with the fencing around the actual solar field. So 10 acres is a good rule of thumb for 2 megawatts. The Plano field is smaller and they were kind of landlocked in. So they're using up about 4.5 acres. It's a little bit different there. It's busier. They got solar on rooftops and they squeezed it in wherever they had some open property there. But if you look at that, you can see there's a lake on the one side. They got a road on one side, and actually on the right side, there's actually a creek river running through there. So that's approximately the acreage of those 4 pictures. But we've also done stuff a lot smaller. Fox Valley Park District, Oswego Park District, they put them on roofs, and these are just the bigger ones. There's all different sizes.
And did that work at the water treatment facility? Has anybody called and complained about how it's difficult to maneuver around or anything like that? Or does it work?
No, they're extremely happy with it. And, if you want to talk to them directly, they'd be more. I was actually surprised how much they put it in all over the place. We were thinking they would just kind of have it way in the upper left in the open area, but their public works director and their mayor, they were like, hey, we're never going to use this property. We're not using it for anything else. You can see they have the roads open. So they said, hey, let's put solar there. Then we don't have to worry about mowing the grass. But that was their philosophy. They're like, let's get as much solar on here as we can get.
That's really clever. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. Mr. Kenyon, you had a question?
I'm Mike Kenyon. I'm on the board and a local farmer. We have a facility that's being built in Burlington, 15 acres. We had permission to do 2 of them, and the other one is right next to the power line. We remember they cut across Kane County coming down from Byron, came down from Byron. And you're not going to believe this, but Edison has not been easy to deal with. I know it's a shock to everybody. But the 15 acres, they haven't done anything with it, but now we have property in DeKalb, and now they're thinking about bigger facilities like 300 acres. And that's all rural there too. So, and I know Wisconsin had bigger facilities. Well, ours started 2 years ago. You're going to be surprised again that it takes a long time to get things done. Next Amp is the people that built ours, and it's not operating yet, but so far we're happy with them.
Yeah, and this is Arnie Schrammel. We actually work with NextAmp, subscribing, getting subscribers to fill those fields. But what you're describing is one of those, you get two, I'm guessing you have two 2-megawatt fields, what they call co-located. They're actually separate fields, but they're actually right next to each other, or very close to each other. But the other thing that is going on is the price of solar keeps dropping. Some of these 200-300 acre solar farms are getting close to being economical without additional incentives from the state of Illinois. Just by using the federal incentives, as the price keeps dropping, if the land is cheap enough, they are starting to get competitive. But you have to have major scale to do that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyon and Mr. Schrammel. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question for Mr. I'll defer.
I'm sorry, identify yourself?
Shepro.
Oh, Shepro. I'm sorry,
I thought
Ken.
someone
Go
else
ahead.
wanted to ask a question. My question was actually for Mr. Kenyon, perhaps, is, I mean, between solar and ComEd out in Burlington, what's better in your view from a standpoint of either, land consumption, land use, or cost?
Well, when ComEd came through, they were very fair when they didn't even condemn it, but they paid us, they leased the land.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a fair amount of money. Remember, Barbara, the
power towers?
Yeah, the power towers.
I do remember.
But some of my friends, they say, well, we don't like those solar panels. We don't like what they look like. And I said, get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the future. So we get $1,000 an acre per year to put solar panels on a farm. And you can't make that with normal crops. So they're easy to work with, and we've been paid 2 years now, and they haven't done anything. I mean, made any money for themselves.
Thank you. That's very, very interesting.
Tom, is that Mr. Copey?
Hi. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I understand, I heard this through the grapevine, fairly reputable sources, that there's a 100-acre solar farm being discussed over in DeKalb County. Now, two questions to that is, I would assume that they're looking at this federal money also, and if there's hundreds of millions available, and that one solar farm is, potentially cost hundreds of millions. I don't know exactly. I don't know what it costs to put in an acre of solar, so you just got to do the math on that. But I know that it's expensive. I know it's $20,000 to $30,000, $40,000 per acre. But and then if the question I have is, the real two questions I had were, do the sightings have to be near a transfer station? I think that's a term that I've heard recently. Mrs. Bates brought that up to me yesterday at a discussion. And then also, is there a chance that the field, no pun intended, will become saturated? And we're anticipating today's prices, of course, adjusted for inflation, however you amortize that. Today's prices, electric will be cheaper over the grid versus building your own. So that was a point of contention that a board member had brought up recently. They were anticipating future rates, and it ended up costing them more for their investment, and we don't want to get into that situation. And that's if those questions were clear enough, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Arnie Schrammel. I mean, right now, if you can build, and I'm biased on this, I got solar on my own personal roof, we got solar in our office, but we also have a lot of customers with solar. If you can do solar on your roof or on a property next to you, you'll absolutely save at least 15 to 20% over what you're paying today. Community solar, like I'll pick on the NextAmp program, they're going to sell you, you can sign up with NextAmp today if you're a residential customer, you know, even to the Burlington field if you want. And they're going to guarantee you your electric supply cost will be 20% cheaper than whatever the ComEd price is. Now, that doesn't mean your bill is 20% cheaper because the electric supply cost is about 60% of your bill. The other 40% is the ComEd charges and taxes. But the 60% of your bill will be 20% cheaper with community solar, and they'll do contracts as long as 20 years. So both those, there are real savings right now. You know, to answer your other question on these large scale, multi-100 acre solar fields, there's very little of that in Illinois, but in other, you know, Wisconsin's got some big ones. Minnesota has a couple big ones that are actually built and up and running. And, you know, these solar fields, they're a lot of money up front. We'll pick on like the Mooseheart field. That field cost, that 10 acre field or 2 megawatt field is about $4 million. With the federal tax and credit of 26%, and the state incentives and some accelerated depreciation, about half that 4 million is covered through tax credits and rebates. So the net investment is only $2 million, but like everything else, the developer has to come with $4 million up front, and then it takes them, you know, 2 to 4 years to get that $2 million back. But that's why a lot of these projects can go right now. It's really the incentives. But once solar is built, the actual cost of producing power is very, very low.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Tom and Mr. Schrammel and Ken and Mike. Mike has one more comment.
When I look around the county, it's too bad we can't put these on our abandoned landfills. But I understand there's a problem with how deep you can go with the posts. But the one on Woodland landfill, I think it's 120 acres. And it's closer to the sun too, because it's in the, it's 100 feet in the air, and it's just grass. So, and it wouldn't, you could make it useful. You could have pictures on there or something like that.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyon.
Yeah, well,
all right.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead,
I
Ms.
know-
Allen.
Thanks. I know this is far-fetched, but I was involved in a meeting where a gentleman said that he had a detention area and he needed a helipad. And so he engineered his way to put that helipad over the detention area environmentally correctly and solve both of those problems. So maybe at some point we'll figure out a way to suspend our solar field over Woodland. Just a thought.
And put in a helipad for Kenyon.
yeah.
All right. We do have another meeting at 10 o'clock after this meeting. So if we can just any more last minute questions, otherwise we'll. Okay, well, we'll move on, and thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Schrammel.
Thank
for
you.
appearing and giving us the good information. Thank you. All right, we'll go to environmental B, a resolution request letter of support for U.S. Army Corps Fox River connectivity and habitat study. Jody?
Blair, could you scroll down to the presentation, please? We have Rob Linke, one of our engineers online, that's going to go through this. Keep scrolling. There you go. Oh, nope, that's the funding.
Next one up.
Yep.
That's the resolution.
It's in the packet, so go back to the resolution and scroll down from there.
Yeah, it's right after the resolution papers.
Yeah, that's.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Good morning, everyone. In the interest of time, recognizing there's another meeting come up, I will be as brief as I can. Again, we are on behalf of the Fox River Study Group. We are presenting a request for a resolution for a letter of support for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to restart or continue their Fox River habitat and connectivity study. But we felt that it might be important to maybe give a brief overview of exactly what the Fox River Study Group is and what we've been up to lately for those of you that maybe haven't been kept abreast of those activities. So I'm just going to run through a few of the slides here. There are some additional slides in here that have some additional detail. I wanted to put those in the packet, but so we'll kind of go through this very quickly. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Fox River Study Group, it's a not-for-profit organization. It was actually formed nearly 20 years ago. We actually incorporated 18 years ago. We were working a couple of years before that. And it's comprised of environmental groups, sanitary districts, and local government representatives. And the reason why it was put together was to address some of the water quality concerns that were that had been brought to light by the Illinois EPA as part of the monitoring that they do on the Fox River. If you go to the next slide, please. And so the Fox River Study Group is really there's really three different groups of people that are working within the study group. You have the board of directors. I have the honor of representing Kane County on the board of directors, and so we kind of provide the oversight and direction for the activities that go on. There is a large number of volunteers, both private volunteers as well as within the organizations, such as the sanitary districts. They have volunteered their in-kind time for their laboratory staff to conduct monitoring of the water quality in the river. And then we also contract out with several different consultants. Currently, we're working with Geosyntech consultants. The USGS does some monitoring for us, and the Illinois State Water Survey has been a longtime partner in this project in preparing analysis of some of the data as well as some of the modeling. Next slide, please. And so just to give you a quick idea of the scale of what the Fox River Study Group is looking at, you can see the Fox River watershed in its entirety is there on the map on the left. It's about 2,600 square miles. It extends up well north of the Illinois-Wisconsin border. The area that we are focused on is depicted in the map on the right. It's about a 1,700 square mile area. And you can kind of make out the Kane County border or the boundary limits there in the middle. And as you can see, Kane County really constitutes kind of the meat of this study area, at least in terms of the most developed portion of the watershed. Go to the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, the reason why the study group actually came together is the Illinois EPA does some limited sampling and analysis of the water quality sampling that they do throughout the state of Illinois. And then they make some assessments on the quality of our rivers and streams. And in order to meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act, they issue a report that says what the quality of those rivers and streams are. And then there is a process. If the rivers and streams don't meet the water quality standards, they often will require what's called a total maximum daily load study, which basically is the Illinois EPA prepares their own analysis and then tells all of the people in the watershed, all the organizations, the sanitary districts, and so on and so forth, what they are allowed to discharge into the river. And so back in the late 1990s, when development was going hot and heavy, the limited data that the EPA was collecting was showing that there were some real problems in the river. And so there were discussions then that they were going to prepare this total maximum daily load study based on that limited data that they were collecting. And so that the reason that the Fox River Study Group really organized was we really initially banded around the common goal of making sure that there was more data being provided so that they could make a more informed decision over what the restrictions would be that we would have as far as discharging into the river. And then out of that monitoring, as we continued to do more and more expanded monitoring, we determined and approached the Illinois EPA to explore the opportunity of actually preparing our own study, basically kind of taking the local control over that process to decide what we would be able to do in order to meet those water quality standards. You can see on this graphic here, just to illustrate that there are, and there historically been a lot of impairments with regards to excessive nutrients that are going into the Fox River. And that's kind of what the EPA has listed as the primary impairment for the river. And that's what we've been focused on addressing. If we can go to the next slide. And so again, going back to the very beginning there in April of 2002, the Fox River Study Group's been monitoring at numerous locations up and down the main stem of the Fox River, along with several of the tributaries, and collecting that data to be used in the analysis. If we go to the next slide. We've also partnered with the USGS, and we're actually funding some additional detailed monitoring that they're doing at the upstream end of the study area, which you saw there on the watershed map. And this is basically to collect some detailed information on the water quality, specifically looking at the algae and chlorophyll A concentrations that are coming out of the Fox Chain Lake. So this really gives us a better understanding of what the boundary conditions are, what we have to deal with that's coming in at the top end of the watershed. Go to the next slide, please. And we've also done a lot of intensive low flow monitoring during periods of drought, such as in 2012, and then in 2016, we were back out and mobilized. And this has really been a tremendous effort, getting out, folks going out and monitoring very, very early in the morning to try to pick up that water quality data. We know that the dissolved oxygen, which is depleted by the algal production, which is driven by the nutrients in the stream, that those things all happen early in the morning. So we had volunteers out collecting this data. If you go to the next slide, please. And so by collecting that additional data, we worked with the Illinois State Water Survey to take the data that the EPA has, all of the monitoring that we've been doing, and to prepare a water quality trends analysis. And this is a document that is available online for anybody. There's some good graphs and tables and charts for the general public to kind of get an idea of what the overall quality of the river is. And generally speaking, things have been getting better, particularly when we look at nutrients. So you can see there in the chart, it shows that we've had, between a 20 and 25% reduction in total phosphorus and dissolved phosphorus. And those are really great milestones that we've achieved. But in order to meet the water quality standards defined by the Clean Water Act, and to meet some of the other recommendations that the state of Illinois is being asked to make through the nutrient reduction policies, we have to reduce the nutrients substantially more. And so that's really where the Fox River Study Group comes in. If we go to the next slide. In preparing this plan, doing the additional analyses and looking at what can we do in the watershed, and what combination of scenarios can we implement in order to meet those nutrient load reductions. And so, for example, you can see here, we're looking at the impacts of removing the dams, changes to the wastewater treatment plants, the impact of the non-point source pollution, the stormwater that runs off of our urban landscapes, the runoff that comes from the undeveloped or agricultural areas. If we go to the next slide, please. We can skip ahead, please. And so the modeling is really done to kind of fill in the gaps in the data. We have all this snapshot of these water quality samples that are taken up and down the river, and the model allows us to basically put all those together and then look at those different scenarios and see what combination is going to be the most cost effective for the watershed as a whole moving forward. We can go to the next slide, please. And so currently we're working with Geosyntec. The Illinois State Water Survey had initially developed the modeling protocols and methodology. And again, that started way back in 2007. Since 2018, we've been working with Geosyntec. Limnotech had done some analysis for us. And basically what it is it's kind of a long-term process where we're refining the models and making them more and more accurate to be able to give us better confidence in the recommendations that we can pull from those results. Go to the next slide, please. And the modeling that's done, it's basically broken up into three separate parts. There's a watershed model that looks at what happens on the landscape when it rains, and does that analysis. And then that data is fed into a model of the actual Fox River itself, where within the in-stream of the Fox River, we look at the hydraulics and then what's happening with the water quality as far as the nutrients and how that affects the algae production, and which then impacts dissolved oxygen. We'll go to the next slide. And I think we'll skip over a couple of these slides in the interest of time. I left those in there. You guys can look at those if you'd like. Just showing again, it's a very extensive effort. This slide would be a good slide to talk on here as we transition to the reason for the resolution. And that is, so the model is looking at essentially 4 different groups of scenarios. We have a reduction, evaluating the impacts of what happens if there are changes in the upstream loading, what's coming out of Wisconsin, looking at changes from the non-point source, what's coming in off of the watershed, the agricultural areas, those urban areas, as well as looking at changes in what the wastewater treatment plants can discharge into the river and how that impacts. And then the last thing is looking at the impacts of changes to the river itself as defined by the dam. The dams have basically divided up the river into a series of interconnected or cascading bathtubs, particularly as you go through the Kane County area. And so a big part of this analysis has been to look at, well, what would happen to the health and quality of the river if the dams or some combination of the dams were removed and it was restored to a free-flowing condition. We've seen a lot of promise over the last year or so in the analysis that we've been doing as we've refined those models with that new data, working with Geosyntech. And so that kind of brings us forward to today. If we go to the next slide. And so I think all of you are familiar with the work that the King County Forest Preserve District is doing in removing the Carpenter Dam up in Carpentersville. And this is a project that we have some particular interest in to the extent that the Fox River Study Group is actually funding and coordinating some fairly extensive monitoring before the dam is removed, as well as after the dam is removed, both in terms of water quality, the biology, the fisheries, the macroinvertebrates, the bugs that live in the river, even the mussels. We're going to go out and the Illinois Natural History Survey is going to do some sampling and identification of the mussels that live above and below the dam, and then look at what happens and how they recolonize this area. So this presents an excellent case study because it's something that's going to be happening here over the next 24 months or so. If you go to the next slide, please. And that brings us to this Army Corps study. The Army Corps study began, I believe it was back in 2015, and it was this comprehensive study that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Chicago District and Rock Island District were working on to look at what the impacts of removing the dams would have on the Fox River, what they would have in terms of socioeconomic impacts, environmental impacts, the engineering and costs that would be associated with those. And so there was a lot of excitement when they started that process back in 2015, but unfortunately, due to some state budget or funding shortfalls there, the project had to be put on the back burner, and it was suspended, and it's kind of been in limbo ever since. And we actually just found out, this slide is out of date. We just found out that this study would not be included in the 2021 work plan. A couple of months ago, we were notified of that. And so what we're here today is asking for the county, as we've requested of all of the municipalities in the area as well, to consider writing a letter of support to the Army Corps of Engineers, requesting or showing our interest in having them restart that plan and include it in their 2022 work plan so that that can be completed, recognizing the important piece of the puzzle and how that could answer a lot of additional questions and really lay the groundwork for the work that we see coming up in the next several years, as the model seems to show, our work seems to suggest that dam removal is a key part of properly managing the health of the water quality of the Fox River. And if you go to the next slide. And again, that work is ongoing. The final management plan that the Fox River Study Group is working on is due at the end of December of 2022. And again, just we think that that's really going to be talking a lot about the dams and looking at that as a very realistic and cost-effective scenario to reach those water quality goals. And I believe that's the last slide. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Rob. Okay, well, first of all, I'll accept a motion to move the resolution forward.
Caius move.
Moved by Mr. Caius.
Alan second. Strathman.
Second by Mr. Weber. And now I'll open it for discussion or any questions. Great presentation, Rob. Go ahead.
This is Alan. I just wanted to say that it looks like we should be an obvious player in this because the Batavia Dam sort of disappeared, and I'm guessing that we have some information before and after. And then the work at Fabian, getting rid of the causeway, and then Carpentersville. I entirely support this, Rob. Thanks for the good work.
You're welcome, and sorry for running through that so quickly. I know it's a lot of information. I think it goes without without saying, as members of the committee, if any of you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, contact me directly, and I'm more than happy to talk about it. Like I said, it's been a real pleasure representing Kane County the last 5 years on the board for the Fox River Study Group.
All right. Thank you again, Rob. All right. We'll do roll call.
Alan,
Alan, aye.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Melina,
Melina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Warnicki.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, Jody, we have C.
Could we actually skip ahead to recycling and solid waste? We have Christina on the line to answer any questions. Go to Jennifer Jarlin for that one first, if you would.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Christina's got to jump off at 10, so I just wanted to have her here. I don't have a presentation today. This is the ordinance that we brought to the committee last month for your review with the red line and the clean version. What you have before you today is the resolution to amend it as we had previously shared, and you have a clean copy also attached in your agenda of what you are approving there. So we just need to pass this resolution or put it for the vote, please.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Christina, you have the floor.
I just wanted to say I'm here to answer any questions that you have. I know you guys are running behind on your agenda, so go ahead and I'll answer questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. I'll accept a motion then to amend the ordinance, and that would be Kane County Code, Chapter 11.
Molina moves.
Okay, moved by Melina. Do I have a second?
Alan seconds.
Okay, second by Deborah Allen. Any questions for Christina or Jennifer, or any discussion? Okay. Oh, hearing none, we'll do roll call.
Alan,
Alan, aye.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Melina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Warnicki.
Yes.
Passes.
All righty.
Thank you. Blair, if you could go back to the sustainability and recycling budget discussion item. Thank you. I did go through this very quickly last month. We were running out of time, so I'd like to maybe spend a little bit more time on it today, even though we are running a bit late again. I think we have the opportunity to maybe look at the numbers in a little bit more detail. Next slide. I think you can probably jump a whole, 2 slides. Next slide. Thank you. We had included this as part of our budget presentation. I do this because it's important to note at the bottom, we are including the amount of depletion that we're experiencing every year from the Enterprise Surcharge Fund. The anticipated 2021 depletion amount jumped up significantly because of the Mr. Rickards' projections on the interest rate this year. And so the loss, because much of the funding that we're seeing that is rolling over year to year, we're using that fund balance and the interest that's generated from that fund balance. So the more we deplete the account, the less the interest is, and it's kind of a vicious circle. So we want to make sure the county board is aware every year when we come through for budget that we continue to deplete the fund, and we're giving you an exact figure as well as an estimate. So had the interest rate for 2021 been estimated at the same as it was in 2020, the depletion amount would have only been $60,000. So we are making headway on our overhead and expenditures in this fund, but it still is a losing battle. Next slide, please. The cost share drainage and Mpds is the other item of discussion under our budget. The Mpds and our clean water for Kane are entirely funded from the riverboat. And so I've included this slide as well, so you can see where those items fall in our budget. Next slide, please. So to talk about recycling and sustainability income sources first, I've listed all the items that fall under that 650 and are under recycling and sustainability. So starting at the top, we have haulers fees. We actually increased that fee in 2019. So we are seeing more revenue from that. It went up from 4,000 to 16,000. So we're getting about 12,000 more per year into the enterprise surcharge fund as a result of the hauler fees increasing. Our electric charging station is basically an offset cost. We receive $500 in revenue, but it costs us about the same to run those charging stations. Same with household hazardous waste. There's a cost to the program, but the municipalities and the townships participating in that program are offsetting that cost. So the revenue is offset by the cost. So it's basically a net zero. We have the investment income. That's the interest rate that I was talking about. It varies from about $20,000 to $60,000 a year in the fund balance of the enterprise surcharge fund. We have about $5,000 in miscellaneous revenue. And then a large portion of our revenue is coming from the riverboat. You see 96,000 coming for recycling and sustainability. And then the 65,660 was actually reduced as to 60,979 for FY 2021. And that was that reduction in the contract with USGS for our Fox River gauges. Next slide, please. So expense-wise, the detail in that 650 fund, expense-wise, we have salaries in there about $130,000. Again, that household hazardous waste is basically a net zero. It's pretty close to offset by the income. The countywide recycling program that's run by Ms. Jarlin, $14,000. We have a landfill consultant to review the IEPA reports that come back from waste management yearly to ensure that they're meeting our requirements. That's a yearly cost for that, and the reports are ongoing for the landfill closure until it's final accepted, and there's not currently an acceptance date for that. Our EV charging stations, this is funding that we have reserved for the replacement of our EV charging stations and or new stations that are established around the county. We have collection event costs in the order of $20,500. The Fox Valley Sustainability Network receives $1,000. The charging station network fee, $1,000 basically offset from the income. The green guide that's published yearly is $17,500. We have operating supplies of $25,000 and miscellaneous of $15,000. Next slide, please. The Mpds side, the other portion, this is the clean water for Kane. The vast majority is the funding of those stream gauges that were negotiated to be reduced with USGS this past year. We have very minimal amounts for pollution prevention, the Fox River cleanup events that are held, classroom education, and our continuing education credits for all of our communities. And I just note at the top that these are required under our MS4 permit. They are mandated programs, and so it's important to ensure that we continue funding for these programs to make sure we are in compliance with our IEPA MS4 permit. Next slide, please. So next steps, and we have talked about some of these before, but we wanted to reiterate, and we're certainly open to thoughts, ideas, and suggestions. So once the cross-country course was constructed, that $4 million cost came out of the 650 fund, significantly reducing the interest that's earned on that fund yearly in order to offset our costs. So one of the agreements as part of that was to start moving the salaries off the 650 fund onto the general fund. That has been mainly the way we've reduced the expenditures in that fund. And we've done so by offsetting those salaries that are moved onto the general fund with additional revenue. For example, in this past year, we did move salary from the enterprise surcharge fund onto the general fund, but it aligned with the increase in costs to our stormwater permitting that provided the additional revenue into the general fund to offset those salaries. So we've been trying to do it in a manner that's least impactful for the general fund. We want to continue to pursue state bag fee and bottle deposit legislation that would potentially bring more income into these programs, and it would be a sustainable long-term income. We want to continue to reduce our FY 2021 programming, specifically the items related to the riverboat funding. We're aware from Scott Berger's group that the revenue from that riverboat is anticipated to be less than 50% of previous years. And so we want to make sure that we're stretching our funds as much as possible through the end of FY 2022. We're also pursuing ideas for long-term revenue related to the trash collection and surcharge that can be placed on that for hazardous waste collection recycling programs. And we're pursuing grants where matching dollars may be necessary to stretch those dollars as well. So I open it up to any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Jody?
Or ideas.
All right, thank you. Yep. Let's see, we'll move on to sustainability. Ivy.
I believe the first slide is Karen Miller.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, and good,
welcome.
Good morning. For many, let's see, there we go. For many years, Jack Deeren, Executive Director of the Illinois chapter of the Sierra Club, participated in the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership's annual conversations about conservation with our legislators. We are reconnecting with Jack again to have him speak on current issues and environmental legislation in Illinois. So please join us for our next FREP Noon Network with an Illinois Conservation Update with Jack Deeren, scheduled virtually for Wednesday, April 14th from noon to 1:30 p.m. via Zoom. Go to foxriverecosystem.org for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions or discussion? All right, good. We're moving right along. Ivy.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ivy Clee, Resource Management Coordinator for Kane County. I'm just going to give some sustainability updates and events and programming that I'm working on. So the 10th annual One Earth Film Festival has been going on from March 5th and it ends.
Speak up a little bit, Ivy.
Oh, sorry. So the annual One Earth Film Festival, it's the 10th anniversary, and we are sponsoring a film tomorrow, March 13th at 11 a.m. with the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership. The film is Kiss the Ground, so I invite all of you to attend. If you are available, please feel free to sign up at the link. If we want to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the electrical aggregation contract that we currently have is up for renewal. We work with Sharon Darling with the Northern Illinois Municipal Electric Collaborative. She's our consultant to help with this contract renewal process. So she will be speaking at the next meeting to explain the renewal process and also options for the contract renewal. The contract is up in mid-May and an RFP will be sent out in April, and we are currently working with the purchasing department to get that ready. And Sharon also sent an update on our current savings program from the electrical aggregation program. So the update for March 2021, the ComEd rate for energy is climbing to 7.463 cents per kilowatt hour, and our fixed county rate with AEP Energy is 6.37 cents per kilowatt hour. So our savings program is doing awesome right now. And you know, for some time the last year, the ComEd rate was on the lower side. So there has been a recent spike, which has caused our savings program to have more success. And there's really no way to project future trends. So next slide, please. And then my last item today, I just want to share a fun event that will be happening in April. Chairwoman Bates and I will be working on a Countdown to Earth Day series for the month of April. We will be working with Kane County Connects to put out a public educational campaign and outreach initiative to promote Earth Day with Earth Day celebrations within Kane County. So the series will begin in April, and we're planning to work with Kane County Connects to post an article every day of the month in the newsletter, and the articles will cover different environmental or sustainability subjects. And we will be creating a schedule for these postings. But articles will be written by department staff, local organizations, and leaders in the community. And I would invite all Energy and Environment Committee members to submit articles or participate as an article, or to write an article if anyone is interested. Please feel free to reach out to myself or Chairwoman Bates if you're interested in writing an article. Or have an event to promote. We're also going to be promoting any local events that are happening in Kane County throughout the month of April. So that's all I have for today. And my contact info is below. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivy. Any questions or discussions with what Ivy just presented? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. I'll accept a motion to table item A for 30 days since the Chairman Bates is not here and she'd like to speak on that agenda item. So I'll accept a motion moved by Ms. Molina.
Yes, I'll move.
Do I have a second? Second by
Second,
Mr.
Strathman.
Caius. Okay. Any discussion? Well, no discussion on a table. I'm sorry. I'll roll call, please.
Allen,
Alan, I.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Warnicki.
Yes. All right. Any public comment? Any public comment online? Okay. Hearing none. We'll move on. I'll accept a motion to put the reports on file.
Alan moves.
Moved by Ms. Allen. Do I have a second?
Weber will second.
Weber seconds. Roll call, please.
Allen,
Alan, I.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Warnicki.
Yes. No need for executive session, and I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Caius moved to adjourn.
Caius
Strathman,
moves.
second.
Strathman seconds. We don't know. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.